world you're currently watching, listening to our video blog. I decided to go out for a walk and enjoy this beautiful spring-like weather. It's really nice and sunny, and it's not too cold, not too warm. Just perfect walking weather, right? Anyway, I thought I'd connect with you guys and talk a little bit about what's going on in Europe and kind of, opine a little bit on some of the issues that are just taking place that is so strange and really, for the most part, very counterproductive in many ways. So anyway, there's this issue with the European Union basically trying to mount an offensive against the Russians via this European military agenda that they have. Basically, they want to build up their own quasi-NATO-like force that consists of European military members outside of, the NATO structure with the US. So the whole point for NATO after World War II was to unite, the continent using security as an apparatus. And in order for them to unite the continent, they needed backing of a bigger military forces, which eventually evolved into the NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization that was basically put together by the US and the Western powers at that time. Moving forward in the year 2025, they're now talking about building their own capacity as a unified European counteroffensive against the Russians, which in all reality, folks, there really isn't any threat from the Russians other than, the Russians not wanting to have NATO near their border, specifically in a bigger country that they share a border with. That was the only request by the Russian Federation, not to have an encroachment of NATO organizations near their borders, which is pretty understandable. We wouldn't want anybody encroaching near our border that are pointing military weapons towards the US either. And we definitely don't want foreign military near our border that is, basically increasing and developing their overall capacity near our borders. So, just think about it. Just put yourself in the shoes of the Russians. I'm not trying to take sides. I'm not trying to advocate for anything. I'm just trying to, reflect on certain conditions that would manifest a potential conflict. Okay, you try to avoid conflict in any way possible, as much as you can. You try to, de-escalate, the overall symptom of a conflict. Okay, if you're a logical thinker, if you try to understand geopolitics, geoeconomics, and political saber rattling around the world, I think that you would be very appreciative of the fact that you don't want to stir up the waters and potentially create a conflict between your neighboring country. So with that said, they had a security meeting last week in Britain where they brought in not all of their EU member countries, or not even all NATO member countries, but they decided to have a meeting and start talking about developing a European army, European military force that is definitely going to aggravate the whole situation. Now, let me tell you who's involved. So the people that are promoting this military organizational treaty among European member countries are Macron and Steinmeier. Neither one of these politicians served in the military. They don't know nothing about combat. They've got no experience in Central and Eastern Europe. And on top of that, neither one of them really know what war is like, since they've never been in a war condition. So they want to commit their citizens, mostly young people, to embark on an agenda that could, precipitate into a full-blown war situation in continental Europe, one of the smallest continents on planet Earth. So why would anybody want to go against, countries that simply don't even want to do business? They don't want to engage them. They don't want to have anything to do with the European Union whatsoever. They're not interested in occupying any NATO member countries or even non-NATO member countries, as long as they're not attacked. I'm talking about the Russians, obviously. As long as they're not attacked and they're not compromised, okay, in wanting to defend themselves, right, folks? So anyway, just think about what I'm talking, about now, because every single one of these people, in terms of trying to escalate the situation with the Russians, have never served in their military. No prior background. Even Zelensky, he was a comedian, he was an actor, okay, and now he's leading a country that he basically, talked into going into war with the Russians. So, which is very counterproductive. 3 years in an ongoing war, and thousands of lives snuffed out, and there's no mention of de-escalating and preserving peace and bringing the region back to normalcy. So that's just something that I find extremely strange, folks. So anyway, I just want to kind of reflect on these issues that is pretty much in the heads of many regular people. If you're just a normal person doing your day in, day out, routine, and you hear about wars going on and the escalation of war, people developing various institutions that could precipitate it into a bigger war, how would you decipher that? How do you, make sense out of it? It's hard, especially if you don't know enough and have a reference of what's really taking place behind the scenes. Okay, folks, so I want to make sure that the public knows, the regular people understand, that none of these decision makers have had experience. I'm talking about the politicians within the European Union. None of them have served their military, and none of them have been in combat. Okay, so that's just the reality, folks. It's really very strange, in my opinion, for them to lead, the continent into a war condition, rather than de-escalating the ongoing war in Ukraine. Just think about what I'm saying. Go and research the expertise, experience, and overall credibility of these politicians. Do they have prior military experience? Have they lived and worked in Central and Eastern Europe? Have they actually been engaged themselves by a potential foe? Okay, do they even have an understanding, the basic understanding of the ramification of a war, especially in Europe? Okay, I mean, it is now the year 2025. there is no need for war to take place anywhere in the world. We now all have access, even third world countries have access to information, to knowledge transfer, to technology. You know, we can build capacity without having to encroach or, you know, invade other countries. There really is no need for war today. And it's extremely unfortunate that the media and, you know, overall the Western world isn't reviewing the backgrounds of these people. You know, look up their bios, look up their overall career and experience in the region in Central and Eastern Europe. Do they even have the expertise or know-how or ability to verbalize you know, their overall thoughts that is coherent, that people can understand? Because they don't have the background, they don't have the expertise, they have no, you know, prior experience in Central and Eastern Europe. Okay, folks, that's just the reality of things. It's very unfortunate when you hear in the news that politicians are the one leading the charge to escalate a war condition. Really, it's you know, very counterproductive, because in all reality, folks, they really have never been in that kind of predicament before. They've never fought against adversaries before, but yet they want to commit those in the military, the young people in the military, to fight for no real good reason. It's all a political ideology, folks. So just want to point that out. Make sure to research every single one of these people that are trying to promote war to take place in Europe. Do they have any credibility to even opine on how, you know, this military system that they're trying to build in Europe is supposed to operate? Okay, it's becoming very problematic, because, you know, a lot of what I do revolves around economic development in Central and Eastern Europe. Predominantly of what I have done in the past was to help, you know, increase capacity in the region via trade and commercial development. I've also connected with, you know, various government decision makers to understand what the overall condition and situation is within their marketplace. So if there are people out there in their political system trying to aggravate the situation with the Russians, between Russia and Ukraine, instead of de-escalating and instead of, you know, bringing peace to the region, then I want to know what their expertise are. Why are they so adamant in engaging the Russians, which the Russians simply don't even want to, you know, deal with them? You know, folks, they simply don't want NATO near their borders, especially in a large country the size of Ukraine that would end up bringing in foreign military. Okay, which is, to me, very understandable if you think logically. All right, folks. So anyway, I just want you guys to consider what I'm saying. Just because it's not gonna look good for Europe, or it's not gonna end well for many of these European countries when there's a full-fledged war going on in Europe. Seriously, you know, the world is so different today. I mean, there's no need for us to bring the past back. You know, back, and if you look at the year that World War II took place, the US did not want to participate in what was going on in Europe. Okay, folks, we wanted nothing to do with what was going on in Europe up until we got pulled into the whole mess. And today, looking back past history as a reference, it seems like the same old garbage is happening all over again. The European, especially Western powers in the European Union, would try to flex their muscle, try to beat on their chest, and let the whole world know that they're superior, that they are able to engage, countries like Russia that doesn't even want to go into war with any European countries. But yet, they're trying to make an example of the Russians. They're trying to let the world know that Russia is a nemesis, their arch enemy, that the Russians are up to no good. Well, maybe during the USSR times, yes, when there were a lot of communists operating in Central and Eastern Europe, maybe that would be the case back then. But today, in the year 2025, they have social media in Russia. They have everything that the West have, even better. So why would they want to go to war with anyone? There is no point for them to destabilize their market. There's no point for them to destabilize their society. There's no need for them to have their soldiers march into foreign countries unless they feel a legitimate threat to their security. And so that's the situation, folks. And I hope everyone, wherever part of the world you're located, to consider what I'm saying, because in all reality, what I'm saying is not really shared throughout, the national news organization with, the media and stuff. They don't really talk about these kinds of dangers and potential destabilization of countries and markets around the world. They're trying to make money off of the war. They're trying to make money off of conflicts, these news organizations. So they don't want to cover solutions. They don't want to cover subject matter expertise that have years and years experience, decades worth of experience in the region. But lo and behold, when politicians that really knows nothing about the conflict, knows nothing about the region and the overall, issues that precipitated into this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, are now opining. They're at the front and center, thinking as if they know what's going on. They're like automatic subject matter experts overnight, and they're taking sides. So does that come across as credible decision makers to you when they're just basically piggybacking off of what people are telling them? Mostly, they're advisors like me. I advise politicians off and on. So they really have no expertise, but yet they act as if they're, so entrenched with information that they know everything that's going on between the Russians and the Ukrainians, which is really, destabilizing not only Europe, but also destabilizing other markets in the region. Okay, so it's really very counterproductive. You know what, I'm gonna try to walk towards that area over there. Since it's been a while since I really explored this park, I figured I just kind of enjoy my walk, since it's really nice. The weather's perfect. It's bright, sunny day. But yeah, so consider what I'm talking about, folks. Review the expertise of these people, Macron, Starmer, everyone that wants to go into conflict with the Russians. What is their expertise? Oh, look at this. I've never seen this before. I didn't know there's a pond here. Nice. Okay. So this little backdoor pond. this neighborhood. So anyway, folks, yeah, I just wanted to kind of point these things out to you, because it's becoming not only a nuisance, it's becoming a major issue for, not only the US, but also for many of the countries affected in the region. For America, we know regardless if this situation escalates, we're going to get pressured to participate against our will, especially when there's more people that would suffer as affected by a full-fledged war in Europe. We're going to be dragged into it, just like back in, World War II. That's just the whole reality of this thing. And they're not interested in listening to us when they're escalating this problem and bringing the region back to normalcy. So I want to know which of these decision makers, in Europe, that's promoting the escalation and the development of this European army, structure, has any form of military background, who serve in their military and have been in a war situation where they have to engage, and they're at the front lines. Okay, folks, they're doing their best to spin this war, to make it look like they're superior, that they can take on the Russians. They think that that's the best way to get this all taken care of, is to have the Russians know that they're messing with a superior power. Okay? They're messing with the superior power, but in all reality, the more that they try to bang on their chest, the bigger their inferiority complex is becoming magnified. Their insecurity is being seen by the whole world. Most of these Western countries are very insecure, because they're no longer seen as, the credible authority pertaining to world peace, pertaining to economic, development and wealth creation. So now they're trying to convince the world that they still matter, that they're important, that they are actually credible partners, which is the complete opposite. The more that they try to escalate the war between Russia and Ukraine, the more irrelevant they become. And unfortunately, they don't seem to realize that. So again, folks, research the subject matter expertise of these people, these politicians, these decision makers. Connect the dots. They're operating based off of what's being said to them, what they're being told. Okay, they really don't have any expertise. But they come across, they try to prove to the world that they know how to protect their continent. Okay, they're trying to prove to the world that they have the credibility to bring peace to their continent via their collective strength, which is really not a strength, but mostly, an inferiority complex. They're just trying to, make it seem like they have the power and they have the skill and overall means to engage the Russians, which the Russians, again, does not want to engage European countries, NATO member countries. They have no desire to fight any NATO member countries. Not even any of the smaller ones, not Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. These are really tiny neighboring countries of Russia, and they're NATO member countries. Okay, the Russians do not want to engage NATO member countries. You know, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they're all within proximity to the Russian border. Finland is also within proximity to the Russian borders. They had peace, they've had long peace, you know, prior to this conflict with Ukraine. Matter of fact, Finland is now a NATO member country. Okay, and the Russians didn't really have any problem with that. The issue with Ukraine is that not only do they want to become NATO member countries, they want to put foreign soldiers, boots on the ground, and foreign bases, foreign military bases. So imagine if our adversaries, America's adversaries, were to put bases in Mexico, bases in Canada, and they have nuclear, you know, weapons pointing at us, and they have foreign military, you know, installations inside our countries that are right next to our border. You know, the paranoia among bigger, powerful countries is real, and that also goes to for those people that think that in Europe a war condition would basically pacify the Russians. It's not going to pacify the Russians. It's probably just going to embolden them and just going to piss them off. The more that you poke, you know, this very unproductive and, you know, overall stupid, I guess that's the only way I could put it, stupid way to provoke a superpower like Russia, then they're going to react. It's just the reality of it, folks. You know, once you provoke superpowers to react, then they will, which the Ukrainians obviously found out the hard way. So what do you do when there's a full-fledged war just like what's going on between Russia and Ukraine right now? There's not a whole lot you can do to save lives when there's snuffed out, when, you know, buildings are leveled to the ground, lives disrupted, people displaced. There's not a whole lot you can do. But these politicians, they're trying to prove to the world that they matter, that they're powerful, that they're relevant, that they have the expertise. They end up looking more like idiots, you know, pompous idiots that want to prove to the world that they have power and authority and they're superior. You know, that's been the case for many of these Western European countries for the longest time. You know, that's been the issue among Western European countries, because they didn't really, you know, even trust themselves among themselves. You know, it's funny, if you look at history, the Germans did not trust the French, okay? And the British didn't trust the Germans, okay? This stems back all the way to the Civil War in the US when, you know, the Confederates were supported by the French and the British were supported by the Germans. So throughout history, these European countries have always been fighting. They will never stop fighting because they want to see, you know, they want to have superiority over the next country. And for what reason? You know, and that was the basic premise why World War II escalated to the point that it did. Because people in Europe wanted to have superiority over the next country. Okay? That's, you know, come across to you as logical thinkers, as, you know, wise decision makers, I mean, does that come across as leaders to people? I mean, to me at least, it doesn't make any sense to support, leaders that pretend to be leaders. Why would you support wholeheartedly an agenda, political agenda, that is going to be catastrophic to the overall peace and stability of a country and the region? Okay, folks, and I'm glad many European citizens are voicing their concerns. They're saying, we've had enough of this war. We want to bring the region back to normal. So I'm glad many European, regular European citizens are pushing back. But unfortunately, the news organizations that are making money off of this war conflict simply do not want to give them the voice. So what I'm saying is, to all influencers, all social media bloggers, YouTubers, you name it, podcasters, give the regular people, a voice, because the national news that are making money are not giving them a platform, not sharing the microphone with them for them to share their concerns. So there should be a movement today, and I'm calling this movement, okay, to all that hear my voice and watch my shows, to give the regular public a platform. Give them the ability to share their views on your social media platform. If you're an influencer, podcaster, YouTuber, vlogger, you name it, give the regular person a power to share their thoughts. Okay? And if you're just a regular person, start your own platform. Share your voice. You don't have to be perfect. You can look at me. I'm not perfect. I make a lot of, errors. So don't think that in order for you to share your voice and opinions and concerns that you have to be perfect. So what if people laugh at you? Okay? There's always going to be those people. But at the end of the day, they're going to look at you at a very different light, because you're doing something that they didn't have the guts to do. So share your voice, create your own platform, educate the population of what you believe would help make this world a better place. When I started the faceconomics concept back in college, I didn't really utilize my social media platform the conventional way, the traditional way, where people just share their pictures and talk to friends and families. I actually amplified my overall capacity using the social media platform by using it as an economic environment and an economic development platform. Okay, and lo and behold, Mark Zuckerberg today is a multi-billionaire. Okay, because of the social media environment. Even though they've been giving me a lot of hard time with my Facebook page, and I've actually called for Mark Zuckerberg to be tried and hold accountable for all the public trust violations that he's basically been engaged in the last couple of years. Matter of fact, he silenced a sitting president, Donald Trump, back in the days, before he ended his term, the first term, was on Facebook, and he got kicked out. And even on Twitter, his account was disabled. So that's the power of the social media platform today. They can basically squash the authority and power of setting precedent. Imagine what they would do if you're a nobody. Okay, folks. So anyway, like I was saying, start your own podcast, start your own, social media channel, share your thoughts. Make sure that, you voice your concern. That's how you build a strong democracy. That's how you hold people accountable for abusing their power. You know, the first thing of the authoritarian, the tyrants, the dictators, the communists, you know, all these iron-fisted dictators around the world hates is dissent. When you call them out on it, what they're doing that is wrong, they hate that with a passion. Matter of fact, I've called out so many, you know, corrupt politicians in the U.S. and till to this day, I think I'm being monitored. I know, you know, there are people that are going through my social media platform, my emails, my phone calls. You know, they can do what they want. I know they're abusing their power, so they can only abuse it for so long. Eventually, they're going to be exposed, and you know, justice will prevail, and freedom will reign. All right, folks. So, yeah, I just thought I opine a little bit more on this whole condition, you know, the overall condition with the war in Europe. All right, so I've been operating in the region for over a decade now, and you know, I've seen the ups and downs of the markets in Central and Eastern Europe. I've heard all sorts of, you know, political jargon, political mudslinging going on in Europe. And in many ways, I gotten used to it. But since what's going on in Ukraine has the potential to destabilize not just Eastern Europe, but the whole continent of Europe, you know, I took it upon myself to go ahead and share my thoughts on it. Mainly because it's going to destabilize the markets, one, obviously, but two, it's going to be ruining tons of life. You know, generations of Europeans will be affected by this overall conflict. So, I know I've only got one voice, and I know I'm not much of, you know, an influencer, but I believe that by me sharing my view and thoughts on this whole conflict would hopefully reach, you know, the right ear and the right, you know, heart and mind of the public, and support the de-escalation of the war conflict in Ukraine and bring, you know, the region back to the normalcy. Peace has to prevail no matter what. You know, thousands of people have already died, and that's in the year 2024, 2025, where we have, you know, social media, we have the internet, we have everything possible that's never been, you know, available to humanity before. We got tons of resources today, and yet there are people dying off of a political ideology that's so disjointed. You know, these politicians can't even tell you why the war started. Okay, they don't know what it's like to, you know, engage in a war conflict. Right, folks? And that's the pure, unadulterated fact. Research, okay, the bios of these quote-unquote politicians in Europe. I mean, even Biden, when he was supporting the war, he's never served in the military. You know, I mean, he's a has-been lawyer that manage to convince people that he stands for truth, he stands for justice, he stands for civil rights. You know, no, none of that's, you know, even remotely close to who he really is. So again, folks, research the bios the backgrounds of these politicians, quote unquote politicians. Ruthie, the secretary of NATO, has never served in the Dutch military. Okay, folks. So NATO is definitely not a security-minded organization. It is a political platform where these quote-unquote subject matter expert politicians want to take the continent back to the Cold War. They want to relive World War II again and try to convince the world that they actually are pro-peace, which is nowhere near the de-escalation of the conflict. So folks, I typically don't want to dog people. I don't want to make them look bad, but in this case I have to, because if the war persists and it escalates to a bigger, more problematic war condition, the US will be pulled into it. And maybe other Western powers or even Eastern powers will have to participate. So, who wants World War III to happen? Raise your hands. Comment on this video blog. All right, if you want to see another World War III, let me know. Okay, folks, because I certainly don't want to see it. I don't know any of my supporters or viewers would want to see an escalation of the war in Ukraine into a World War III situation. All right, folks. So anyway, research the bios of these politicians in Europe, okay? Which among them have had experience in Central and Eastern Europe, working, living, interacting, and who amongst them understand, truly understand the dynamics of this war, and compel them, or at least research their overall expertise on the way that they rendered the decision to support Ukraine. Why are they supporting Ukraine? To what extent is that support going to last? And how is that going to manifest in the overall benefit of Ukraine and their countries? The narrative of the Russians attacking other European countries is an old, beat up, dead horse that people use in the diplomatic realm. They say, if we don't protect ourselves, then who's going to protect you guys from what's going on? And that's just how it is, folks. They're always trying to convince people that there's a clear and present danger when there is none. Nothing exists. They create this, boogeyman, the monster in their heads, and make you want to adopt to those, narrative, subscribe to their, doom and gloom scenarios. Why, if they're so sure that the Russians want to invade European countries, why can't they prove it? Why can't they come out and say, all right, based off of this information and, a concrete, proof that the Russians really want to invade Europe or invade their countries? None of them provided any of that. Okay, folks, even within the intelligence community, no one in the intelligence community can vouch for any of those claims from the European Union or even from Zelensky. No one. They can't provide proof saying that, yes, we have 110% proof that this is the game plan that the Russians developing. No, none of them. At least I've been paying attention to the region and world affairs for many long years. not once have I seen credible material that, specifically dictated the overall position of the Russian Federation to engage any European countries, NATO member countries outside of Ukraine. Okay, folks. So that's, I'm just being real with you guys. I have not seen any proof that the Russians want to fight any other countries, NATO member countries or non-NATO member countries. I've seen many European countries that are poking their, stick against this sleeping bear. They're trying to annoy them. They're trying to instigate a fight with the Russians. These are European countries that alone cannot engage the Russian, Federation. If these countries that are trying to provoke, dangerous response from the Russians, none of them can handle the Russians by themselves. They're doing this because they're part of NATO. They're trying to provoke the Russians because they know if the Russians get pissed off enough that they might one day attack. Luckily, it hasn't came to that. Luckily, the Russian, decision makers simply don't want to, get involved into a war condition. So, yeah, folks, that's just the reality of things. Let me know what your thoughts. If you don't agree with what I'm saying, let me know. Correct me. I definitely want to hear your thoughts. Again, I want to emphasize developing your own platform, creating your own voice. And as far as what I understand, the new administration, the Trump administration, actually welcomes that. They welcome, citizen engagement. And us being, open and willing to share our thoughts with the world. They basically said that we are now the new media, which is the pure 100% truth. Today's world is now developed for influencers, podcasters, YouTubers, vloggers, individuals that don't really have any form of special or monetary agenda to promote propaganda, to promote, disjointed opinions and thoughts, because it doesn't serve their purpose. So I'm glad that the new administration is open to having social media influencers to, participate in the democratic process, because that basically helps strengthen our democracy. The more people are able to share their thoughts and views, regardless, dissent is dissent. So regardless if they agree or disagree with certain policies, certain conditions in government, in our society, in the economy, then share it. Okay? That's the only way you strengthen democracy, is by giving the people power. People power stems from freedom of speech, the rule of law, strengthening democracy so that our freedoms are preserved. We don't want to live in a tyrant society, in an oppressive society. We definitely don't want to be under a dictatorship. If you guys think about it, all these rogue nations around the world, even the various countries, there is no freedom of speech, there is no dissent. They make sure that you're silenced. And I'm seeing that now in the US. Luckily, we have a new administration that is giving us the power again, as the people, as the public, okay, to preserve our democracy. Okay, the last administration, they were doing their best to monitor those that are going against their political narrative. They silenced them, just like the authoritarians of the world, just like the dictators of the world, just like the oppressors, the tyrants of the world. The last administration monitors the opposition, because they know the opposition could be very powerful enough to get them out of power. Okay, folks, that's just the reality of today's world. So like I said, I want to encourage everyone listening to my voice to start a social media platform, do your video blog, do your podcast, be a YouTuber. Don't overly don't overly emphasize about what people would think about you, or if people would laugh about you, or if you're not going to be treated fairly or whatever. All that will happen anyway. Regardless if you're on social media or not, people will still dog you out. They will try to, do a lot of evil, crappy shit towards you anyway. So just keep on going. Start your own social media platform where you can influence others' point of view and opinion, because the new world order, or not even order, the new world marketplace requires people to think. The new game is smart power, people that are thinkers. They're the new game in town. People that can verbalize their views, a narrative that would influence hearts and minds around the world to help build this world to become a better, more inclusive society and prosperous, civilization. So markets today are all evolving, and in addition to that evolution, and what's basically fueling that evolution is the smart revolution. There was this issue with the fourth industrial revolution. Today we now live in the smart revolution, and I will be talking about the smart revolution in my next podcast. So just to let you know what I mean by that is that markets today are looking for influencers, people that can multiply and increase capacity and amplify strategies. Okay, that's the smart revolution of today. Not everybody's going to welcome it, especially those that are overly scared of what other people would think about them. They're the haters of today's world, the ones that are, basically, frozen because of their fear to share their voice. And these are the haters of today's world. You don't see them on social media. They don't even, they're just nowhere to be found. But they're the ones that are hating people. They go on YouTube, they go on various social media platforms, staring at people, listening to them, and hating on them. All right, folks, that's just how it is. They hide behind the scenes so that they can hate and cultivate that hate in their hearts and minds, because they're too big of a coward to make a difference in this world, to contribute to the success of humanity, to help influence markets, to increase capacity, to build up society and lift people from poverty. They're scared shitless to lend a hand because they're stuck on stupid. They just want to be in their comfort zone all day, every day, 24/7, 365 days in a year. Comfort zone upon comfort zone. You know, they buy stuff, they live in a bubble that is within their comfort zone day in and day out, so they know nothing about what's going on around them. They're always trying to be comfortable. All right, folks, and these are the haters of today's world, and they're doing their best to not only make life harder on people that are change makers, they're also trying to make their lives miserable. Okay, behind the guise of the internet, they're hiding behind, you know, the internet platform. So that's just the reality. You know, these are evil people. These are people that are, you know, they're not satisfied with their lives, so that they want to destroy others. They want to corrupt the world so that people that wants to make this world better will not get access to the public, will not get access to the right people and hearts and minds, you know, our influence. All right, folks, and there's plenty of them out there. And so we have to counter that. Be an influencer, be a subject matter expert in your field, and share your expertise with the world. You know, do not fear what people might say, think about you, because as I mentioned earlier, haters will hate, you know, and trust me, throughout the years that I've been doing what I've been doing, I've come across many haters. All right, folks. But in order to inspire, you have to be brave. You have to be, you know, you have to have a strong resolve to make a difference. You have to be confident. That's just the reality of life. You know, you have to do that on a regular basis. Because if you don't, and if you let these haters, you know, consume you, then they win. And you don't want them to win, because they're out there hell-bent in destroying not only you, they're hell-bent in destroying society and the world, because they're not happy with who they are. They hate what they've done with their lives, and therefore those people that are positive, that are trying to contribute to society, trying to help others out, you know, they simply don't want to be around them. They don't want to see them. But yet they follow them online. They watch their videos, listen to them on their podcasts, so that everything will be consumed and it would be bottled in. Okay, so that's how they operate. They simply don't want the world to be a better place for everyone. All right, folks. So I'm nearing my place, and I think I'm gonna, you know, cut off here. Thank you so much for your time. I'm glad that we managed to connect for at least an hour. This is a really nice walk. I enjoyed this walk with you guys. Let me know your thoughts, positive, negative. If you agree, disagree, share those with me, okay, so I can address them on my next video blog. And also follow our podcast, Face Economics Podcast, and our YouTube channel, Face Economics TV. Subscribe, like us, share our information with your family and friends. We're not the typical podcasters. Obviously, we're not, you know, associated with millions and millions of viewers or followers, but we try to create content that is relevant and is well thought out. I don't want to just, you know, do these kind of video blogs and podcasts and not provoke people to think. You know, I want to bring value, and I want to make sure that you see value in what we do. All right, folks. with this said, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to connecting with you again on our next video blog podcast engagement. Take care.